In the MCU, Vision's origin is honestly pretty easy to follow. Can't say the same for whatever is happening in the comics. In the comics, Vision came from the original Human Torch, aka the first artificial man ever created, and Ultron was responsible for constructing Vision. It was later discovered that the Human Torch Ultron got his hands on wasn't the original, it was a temporal replica that was generated using the Forever Crystal. Because of this, Vision wouldn't activate, and Ultron was forced to bring in the OG Human Torch's creator into the mix, forcing him to fix Vision. The brain of Wonder Man was used to do that, so he is the Human Torch and Wonder Man, while also not truly being either, so there you go. Next is the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, because they just can't seem to catch a break. So when it comes to their origins, and no matter which one you look at, there are still a million questions. So for the longest time, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were the children of Magneto. His wife Magda had been pregnant with twins when she disappeared, and it's not hard to believe that Magneto, one of the most powerful mutants alive, would be the father of a powerful witch and speedster. Now, that origin has been retconned, something many Marvel readers hate, but even if it wasn't, there are still some questions I need answered. Like, why were Magda's twins delivered by an evolved cow? Why was that the choice? Now that this origin has been retconned, who and where are the twins that Magda gave birth to? The current story with Wanda and Pietro is that they were the children of Natalia, the sister of the couple that ended up caring for the twins. The High Evolutionary kidnapped the twins from this couple and experimented on them, making them appear as regular mutants. Then they were returned. This is still pretty new for an origin. For decades, Wanda and Pietro were Magneto's kids, so it's taking some getting used to. At least Magneto still sees them as his children, even if it's not by blood. North Star's life is so wild, it's almost like they used a random job generator and just like ran with it. The guy has joined the circus, a Quebec separatist group, Alpha Flight, which is Canada's super team, and he's an Olympic skiing champion. He is also a twin. However, he didn't find that out until much later in life, because when they were children, their parents got into a crash and passed on. They were separated, and North Star ended up being adopted, only for his adoptive parents to also pass in an accident. And at that point, I would personally start asking questions. Someone has to have it out for you. In adulthood, the twins were reunited, and it was so nice, but then they were contacted by Loki, who told them that they were part elf, so they spent some time thinking that they were elves. It wasn't true though. Loki lied, and that's that. Forever Man is maybe the first mutant to ever exist, and yet he doesn't seem to have made any mark on the Marvel fandom. Don't get me wrong, Forever Man has done a lot of stuff, but for a guy that has had since the beginning of time, he really hasn't amassed a large following. Forever Man, whose mutant power is regeneration. If he passes, he just comes back to life as a child, allegedly with no memories of his past lives. However, that might not be true anymore. He claims to have had 10,000 names in his lifetime. Apparently, his memories were reawakened after a particularly grueling passing. Then he met the Avengers, and when they couldn't help him stop his mutant ability, he flew himself into the sun. But that only caused him to be stuck in a constant resurrection cycle until he exploded back to Earth as a kid again, and we don't really know if he remembers who he is after that point, because we don't really see him again. I believe his last appearance was Avengers 218 from 1982. Is he still around? He should be. As long as the Earth spins, he's around. We actually don't really know where he even came from. My favorite thing he ever did though, in one of his lifetimes, he accidentally almost made the entire United States country disappear when he tried erasing Captain America from existence. Have you ever wanted to read about an elf with lots of firepower and almost no consistent backstory? Then boy, do I have the character for you. His name is Melf, M-E-L-F, but his alias is Elf with a weapon, and that's it. That's what he is. It seems that he is part of a bigger group, elves with weapons. We don't know where he's from officially, but the elves are supposed to be agents for the Tribunals, a force dedicated to preserving order in the universe. Melf was a weird guy and would go around offing random people, and he was never caught. He was only stopped because he was run over by a truck. His nephew, Ralph, then took up his undisclosed mission. However, if he was working for the Tribunals, then then maybe his victims weren't random, and wouldn't that be a great and easy to follow explanation? So of course that was retconned. Doctor Strange claims that the tribunals were fake, and we are once again back to wondering why the elves even exist. Retcons and identity theft have led to quite a confusing backstory for Zorn. Zorn's debut was in New X-Men Annual 2001, and at the end he was revealed to be Magneto in disguise. Only he wasn't. Later it was revealed that it was actually Zorn, pretending to be Magneto, pretending to be Zorn. And Zorn is being controlled by someone named Sublime to foster mutant hatred in the world. At the end of the Magneto identity theft fight, Zorn dies, but not really. His body is done for, but his essence was still around through his connection to Sublime, so he came back. The creator of Zorn in 2001 always intended for Zorn to be Magneto, actually Magneto, so when you read that story, there are hints to it the whole way through. It was because the editors liked Zorn's character and Marvel wanted Magneto alive so they could use him again that the confusing aspect of his story was born. Zorn also has a twin brother with very similar powers to him, so sometimes Zorn returns, but it's Zorn 2. What is it with Marvel and twins? Up next, Cable, or Nathan Summers, because what's even going on there? He is the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, but his birth was kind of orchestrated by Mr. Sinister after he discovered that the two X-Men would produce a super powerful offspring if given the chance. Sinister wanted to use this offspring to defeat Apocalypse, but then he ran into a bit of a problem when Jean seemingly passed away. She was actually just at the bottom of Jamaica Bay, so he created a clone of her, Madeline Pryor. She was the one who married Scott and had a kid with him, and then somehow, after that is when everything really hit the fan. Jean Grey appeared alive, Scott left his family, little Cable was kidnapped, and all records of him were erased from existence. A psi bond was created between him and his sister, Rachel Summers, from an alternate reality, and then we had that huge battle in New York where Madeline tried using all the littles to open up a portal. It didn't work. Then Nathan was kidnapped again and infected with a virus that couldn't be cured in the present, so obviously he was sent 2,000 years into the future. And then in the future he was cloned because they were worried they couldn't cure him after all. Apocalypse claimed to be that clone and kidnapped, I guess, baby him to raise to be a host body when he needs it. Cable just has all the spots on the Marvel bingo filled out. Time travel, cloned, super parents that were also cloned, evil self, kidnapped, and that is only the beginning. Being introduced to Eric the Red, and particularly his choice of outfit, is not something I will ever forget, because what is going on there? Scott Summers created this fake identity, Eric the Red, so he could infiltrate a villain organization, and that's fair, that makes sense, but then Marvel made a real Eric the Red that isn't Cyclops, but he wears the same outfit, and the outfits are very specific, so how did Scott even get it? There seems to be no correlation between the two other than the identity name, so whatever that means. Kang is mine, and now it seems the MCU's biggest headache. One thing seems to generally stay the same for him. Every version of Kang starts out as Nathaniel Richards. Where Nathaniel came from though, well, we have options. There was a Nathaniel from Earth 616 that brought peace to Earth 6311 when he traveled there. This made him a big deal. He was known as the legendary benefactor, but he wasn't the Nathaniel native to that planet, so another Nathaniel was eventually born. This Nathaniel was maybe descended from the great benefactor himself or Doctor Doom. This Nathaniel's history was messed up by another him, causing him to be a good guy for a while. Nathaniel grows up and is bored, so he travels back in time to Earth 616's ancient Egypt to be king. Eventually, he tries to return home, but is caught in a time storm and transported ahead to the 40th century, Earth 6311. The future is a mess. They are at war, and the people have regressed into barbarians. Nathaniel has found the perfect group to conquer. This is the first time he takes on the name Kang the Conqueror. He conquers Earth 6311, that galaxy, and then tries to attack Earth 616. He wanted more power, but there was also a historical record that said that eventually a celestial Madonna was going to give birth to the most powerful entity ever, and Kang wanted to be their dad. This was the confusing origin of one version of Kang, but generally considered to be the base Kang, kind of. There are a lot of things in the Marvel Universe that give me headaches, but Shatterstar's origin is really something special. The man is somehow the son and the father of fellow X-Men Longshot. How does that happen? Well, Shatterstar was sent back in time to the Mojoverse, which we will cover in a second because that is all so weird, but he was sent back in time. He was experimented on in the past, and his DNA was used to create date Longshot, so therefore he is Longshot's father. Years down the road, Longshot and Dazzler have a baby, and that baby was Shatterstar. And guess what? Shatterstar helped deliver that baby. That makes Shatterstar Longshot's father and son and his own grandfather and midwife. Because Marvel can't seem to relax, they decided that Longshot and Dazzler would forget the pregnancy ever happened, and Shatterstar was launched 100 years into the future. The guy lived in Mojo World, a realm where TV basically controls everything. Shatterstar lived here for a long time, competing in arenas. It's where he learned to become a warrior. Then he escaped to Earth, where he was a founding member of X-Force, and then at one point we find out that Shatterstar was maybe split in half or just had a twin. His name was Benjamin Russell, and he was in a coma the minute his powers manifested, but looked exactly like Shatterstar and was his other half. The two were eventually combined, which left Shatterstar feeling whole again. Up first is Hawkman. Now, we have been gifted an explanation for his numerous backstories and never-ending lore, and that is because he is simply one guy that just keeps getting reincarnated. But before this was established, good luck. The character was just a little hard to keep up with, to the point where people started making detailed guides on his timeline. Then there was also the fact that two Hawkman characters merged into one during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. There was just a lot of people handling the character, and they didn't always follow each other's lead. Now, with the latest backstory, everything makes at least a little bit more sense. The Phantom Stranger has led a lot of lives. Literally, one is canon now, but it's only a matter of time before someone else messes with his history. His current origin in the New 52 story is that he was Judas, betrayer of Jesus, and that makes him one of the greatest sinners that ever lived. Past origins include him as a fallen angel who didn't pick a side during the Heavenly War. Another is that he was Isaac from the Bible story, but not exactly the same. This time his son died because King Herod was looking for Jesus, and now Isaac hates Jesus and later tortured him. Another is that he was spared during biblical times but didn't want to be, but the angels didn't want to let him in heaven, so he has to walk the earth alone forever. And the fourth is that he was actually one of the last remaining parts of our previous universe. At the final curtain, he approaches those studying the end and then passes part of himself onto a new person, so when the universe is reborn, they also get a Phantom Stranger. In addition to his many backstories, it's also up in the air as to whether or not he is a villain. To me, it sounds like he started out as a villain, he did betray Jesus a few times, but later realized the error of his ways and became a sort of hero. Lots of people just choose to ignore many New 52 storylines, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see what sticks for this guy. Phantom Stranger is now connected to a villain called Question, but that wasn't always the case. Question at one point was a character that was thought to be a supernatural power, thought to be because it was never made clear. One of the only things that is now considered canon about him is that he has committed a crime bad enough to be considered one of the world's greatest sinners, part of the trio of sin with Phantom. We never know his name. Before being turned into Question, the guy was obsessed with power and having his name feared by all. As his punishment, he got his face taken away and he can no longer remember himself or his name. This was introduced in the New 52. Before that, he was just the alter ego of Vic Sage, but then Flashpoint caused them to separate and even have brand new different histories. This version of him isn't that bad, he just really wants to know who he is. I am hopeful for a name reveal, whether he's another universe version of an existing villain or a real historical figure. Supergirl's horse, Comet, was originally a centaur in ancient Greece that longed to be a human, and one day he ended up saving the sorceress Circe, and she told him that she would give him any reward. He of course asked to be human. So how did he end up instead as Comet the horse? Well, she made the potion to turn him human, but she also made one that would turn him into a horse and accidentally gave him the wrong drink. The comic is like she went away for days to make this potion he had wished for, and then she came out with two. Why did she make two? He wished to be a man. Why didn't you just make the potion that would turn him into a man? Or if you had to make both, why didn't you just throw out the one that would turn him into a horse? You didn't need that one. It doesn't make any sense. And you spent all that time making the potions and there's no antidote? This whole thing never needed to happen. If she had never made the horse version of the potion, then I wouldn't have to live with the knowledge that Supergirl dated her horse, because that did happen when Byron eventually did become human down the line. Worm and Velvet are a duo of a worm and his metahuman, maybe. There is a duo of boy and worm. The boy is called Worm and the worm is named Velvet. Velvet likely created created this human kid because he can create humanoid constructs capable of independent thoughts and actions. Likely he did this because he was supposed to be a spy for Peacemaker. The kid could stay in one place while the worm roams around collecting info. The worm also lives in the body's stomach. The boy and worm are separate things. The boy doesn't survive the end of the comic he was featured in, but Velvet the Worm does and joins Doom Patrol, accompanying them on later missions. So yeah, this all happened in Unstoppable Doom Patrol from 2023, which is not exactly a comic known for being normal, if that makes any of this easier to digest. Dula Dent's origin is confusing because she wants it to be. She has claimed to be the daughter of the Joker, Catwoman, the Riddler, the Penguin, Scarecrow, and Two-Face. She was first introduced as the Joker's daughter, but her last name is Dent, which belongs to Harvey Dent, or Two-Face. So now she is known as Two-Face's daughter for a while, until Robin figures out she's not the right age to be his daughter. She agrees and then just disappears. She appeared in the Teen Titans comic series, and she was planned to be revealed as a time traveler that gets reality warped one too many times and is driven insane. Unfortunately, we never got to see this as the comics were cancelled. Technically, Dula doesn't want to be a villain, but she does fight a lot of heroes and lies all the time. She was later revealed to actually legit be the daughter of another universe Joker and Three-Face, a female variation of Two-Face. Is this a lie? You can literally never know what's real in these universes anymore, and turns out, neither can Dula. It's suggested that because her mind was warped so much that every time she switches Earth, her consciousness switches slightly as well, which is why she named so many different parents. She was just confused. Boss Glitter was the main antagonist of the forgotten DC series about the Heckler. He's a ruthless mob boss with a little bit of flair. He uses old Mardi Gras masks to hide his face and controls the city by planting a bunch of lieutenants that manage different parts of it for him. The problem is the Heckler keeps defeating all those lieutenants and throwing them in jail, so naturally Boss Glitter wants the Heckler to heckle no more. When his lieutenants fail, Boss Glitter takes the matters into his own hands and sends a bouquet of flowers to Heckler, who is in the hospital with a bomb in them. The Heckler does still survive though, and we don't hear from Boss Glitter anymore because the comics had bad sales, so the series was cancelled. So we never actually found out what his deal was, what is with the Mardi Gras masks. Why is Boss Glitter your mob boss name? We'll never know, and it does haunt me. Jay Garrick becoming the fastest man alive because he knocked over some water and inhaled the fumes? How does that make sense? The Flash character Jay Garrick was first introduced in late 1939 in Flash Comics 1. He was a brilliant student that had been working with hard water for years, specifically studying the gases emanating from it. One late night, while experimenting with separating the water's elements, Jay, the brilliant student, had the brilliant idea to smoke in the lab. He knocked over the hard water fume glass, and when he tried to clean it up, he fainted from exposure and woke up the fastest man alive. Through my research, I came across the debate that suggested that whoever was coming up with the original origin story way back when might have confused hard water and heavy water. Hard water is water with a higher mineral or dissolved metal content, and it's not particularly dangerous. Heavy water is used in nuclear power plants, and that makes it seem super mysterious. Maybe they thought because hard water technically has more minerals, it would just make you better. I don't know. Either way, becoming the fastest man alive because you inhaled water fumes is a very odd choice. Elongated Man also debuted in a Flash comic, and his original origin is also a weird science story. Ralph Dibny was fascinated by a particularly stretchy man he had seen at the circus as a child and was determined to make himself stretchy. He discovered that the performer liked drinking this soda called Gin Gold and figured, well, that must be the cause of his flexibility. So he started to experiment with the drink. He figured out that the main ingredient was a little-known tropical fruit, and that was what gave the performer his stretchy power. By isolating the essence of this mystery fruit and drinking that, Ralph became Elongated Man. Now don't worry, it's not all this mystery tropical fruit. There is an element of willpower too. These Golden Age origin stories might not make any sense, but they sure are entertaining. And finally, the Joker is one of the most iconic villains of all time, so it's no wonder why so many people want to leave their mark on his story. Unfortunately, that makes for a pretty messed up, twisted, confusing history. Speaking of which, I would love to know y'all's thoughts on the newest lore from Joker 2. Anyways, there are a few constants with the Joker's story, but often he ends up in acid and comes out looking the way he does. Who he was before, and even during the swim, is kind of up to whoever is holding the pen. In 1951's Detective Comics 168, the Joker had been the Red Hood, also a criminal, and one night he decided to rob a factory, escaping by swimming through the pool of chemical wastes. He He thought he would come out normal, I guess, didn't, and to his delight, he figured out his new look was actually quite scary, and then used that to his advantage. In later versions, like The Killing Joke in 1988, he's a failing comedian, and once again finds himself in the chemical factory, but this time he gets scared into the acid. In Batman the Animated Series, he was a hired slayer first. It kind of really depends on what the writers want to do. Number 10. Shatterstar. I just thought that I would start off the video by giving everyone a headache. I just thought that would be fun. Shatterstar is somehow his own grandfather. There are a lot of things in the Marvel Universe that leave me speechless, but Shatterstar's origin story is really something special. The hero is somehow the son and the father of fellow X-Man Longshot. Shatterstar was sent back in time in the Mojoverse, experimented on in the past, and his DNA was used to create Longshot, so therefore he is technically Longshot's father. Years down the road, Longshot and Dazzler have a baby, and that baby is Shatterstar. And just to make this even more insane, Shatterstar helped deliver the baby. So to recap, Shatterstar is his own grandfather and midwife, and Longshot's father and son. Now that's a disaster, so to keep the timeline intact, Longshot and Dazzler were made to forget that the pregnancy ever happened, and Shatterstar was sent 100 years into the future. Somewhere along the way, Shatterstar was either split in half or just like had a twin the whole time named Benjamin Russell. Benjamin was in a coma the minute that his powers manifested, but looked exactly like Shatterstar and was his other half. The two were eventually combined again. Number 9. Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson used to be a mobster named Snap, or did he? So we all love Sam Wilson, the Falcon, or Captain America in the MCU, and we all hate Red Skull because he sucks and does things like fabricating an entire fake personality for beloved heroes in order to discredit them and make them his pawns. Sam Wilson was one such hero. Red Skull used the Cosmic Cube to essentially create a mobster personality for Sam named Snap, and controlled him mentally via Snap. This was disastrous for the character because he already lived in a world where people hated him simply because of his skin tone, and now people have been led to believe that he really was a criminal, turning some of his supporters against him. It was Red Skull's intention to use public feelings towards darker complexions to discredit Wilson. In the end, everyone learned that Sam was never Snap, but the damage was done to an extent, and then topping it off, Sam ended up catatonic for a while, and then when he woke up, he went to trial because he did commit some crimes while under mind control. Nick Fury stepped in, and the charges were later suspended. Number 8. Cable. The son of Cyclops and Jean Grey, Cable's birth was orchestrated by Mr. Sinister after he discovered that the two X-Men would produce a super powerful offspring if given the chance, and Sinister wanted to use this offspring to defeat Apocalypse. The problem was, Jean Grey seemingly passed away before they could have a kid, so to fix that, Mr. Sinister created a clone of her, Madeline Pryor. She married Scott and had a kid with him. This is already giving like red strings on a corkboard, but somehow we're not done because we haven't even hit the time travel and resurrections. Jean Grey was actually alive the whole time, so Scott left his family. Cable was kidnapped and all records of him were erased. A psi bond was created between him and his sister Rachel Summers from an alternate reality, and then Madeline Pryor kind of crashed out, which you can't really blame her after your husband leaves you for yourself and then your kid is snatched. Madeline ends up passing away in the end. Then Cable was kidnapped again and infected with a virus that couldn't be cured in the present, so he was obviously sent 2,000 years into the future, and then in the future he was cloned because they were worried that they couldn't cure him after all. Apocalypse claimed to be that clone and kidnapped, I guess, like baby Cable to raise him to be a host body when he needs it. So to recap, Cable has had to deal with time travel, clones, super parent clones, an evil self, and a kidnapping, and that's only the beginning for this character. Number 7. Bouncing Boy. Early superheroes really were subject to the strangest origins. Case in point, Bouncing Boy. Bouncing Boy stands out in the DC universe for his just bizarre origin story. Unlike most superheroes who gain their powers through cosmic or scientific means, Chuck accidentally drank a super plastic formula that he thought was soda pop while distracted at a sporting event. This odd mishap transformed him, granting him the ability to inflate his body into a giant rubbery sphere like that girl from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He can now bounce at high speeds and ricochet off surfaces with surprising force and invulnerability. Initially, the Legion of Superhero founders were baffled by his desire to join, and he was even rejected. But Chuck proved his worth when his unique powers allowed him to defeat a villain that was immune to the other Legionnaires' abilities. A simple mistake with a bottle remains one of the weirdest and most endearing origins in superhero comics. Number 6. Black Bolt. Specifically talking talking about his real name. Black Bolt's real name is Blackagar Boltagon. Now that is a name, for sure. Secret identity, we don't know her. Turns out Black Bolt didn't have a real name for a few decades after his creation. He was just Black Bolt, which I would argue is a more normal name than what he ended up with, but hey, he's not from Earth. One day, a Marvel writer decided that was not gonna fly anymore and decided to give this hero a real name. It was subtly revealed in Fantastic Four Annual 18 when Black Bolt got married to Medusa, whose name was also revealed in that comic then to be Medusa Lith, because again, why do you need a secret identity? Just put your name in your real name. The next year, Black Bolt's real name was really set in stone when it appeared in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. Halfway spot number 5, Colossal Boy. Jim Allen, better known as Colossal Boy, was a young science police cadet enjoying a vacation on Mars when suddenly a meteor crashed beside him and gave him powers. The meteor's radiation altered his body at the molecular level, granting him the ability to grow to gigantic sizes at will, a power he first discovered in the middle of a crime chase when he suddenly shot up 15 feet into the air to stop a thief. This accidental transformation from ordinary cadet to superpowered giant is made even weirder by just the randomness of the event. A meteor, out of nowhere, just happens to land at his feet and rewrite his DNA. Unlike many heroes with carefully crafted destinies or inherited abilities, Colossal Boy's powers are the result of pure chance and cosmic oddity, making his origin one of the stranger stories in the Legion of Superheroes, which is a feat when it does come to that team. Number 4, Dynamic Man. Made and not born, Dynamic Man is a victim as much as he is a hero. Dynamic Man wasn't born human. He was actually created in a laboratory by the brilliant but horrible Professor Simon Goletter, who sought to build the perfect artificial human. The professor was really against any form of intimacy between partners, and in particular gay and interracial relationships, which mind your business, but he hated all of that and sought to make his perfect human. Brought to life by a surge of electricity, Dynamic Man emerged fully grown, equipped with superhuman strength, flight, and a moral compass that was fashioned off of the professor's. And of course, he was missing the anatomy that would help with procreation. His creator passed as Dynamic Man was coming to life because he was just too excited to see him, leaving Dynamic Man to navigate the world on his own, searching for purpose and justice. He can only help the people, though, that his creator didn't hate, which caused a lot of problems, all the ones that you might expect. And then he later lost his mind when he found out that he wasn't a real human and was actually a robot. Number 3, Freedom Ring. The once ordinary Chris Doyle stumbled upon a free, dumb ring one day and became the superhero Freedom Ring. Chris discovered a fragment of the Cosmic Cube, a reality-altering object of immense power fashioned into a simple ring. With this ring, Curtis gained the ability to reshape reality, but he had no training or real understanding of its potential. His journey from an everyday person to a superhero was marked by awkward missteps and a lack of traditional mentorship, making his story both weird and refreshingly relatable. Instead of a grand destiny, Curtis's path was shaped by luck, curiosity, and the unpredictable consequences of wielding cosmic power without a rulebook. Unfortunately, in the end, the hero was taken out by Iron Maniac, but he did get a lovely funeral and the ring was passed on to the Crusader. Number 2, the Golden Age Flash. This is one of my personal favorite origin stories. The original Flash got his speedster powers from hard water. That's right, the water that might just be running through your taps, the water that is simply just high in mineral content. It could give someone the power to run so fast they can reverse time. Technically, it was the fumes from the hard water that gave Jay Garrick his powers, but still, Jay Garrick was first introduced in 1939's Flash Comics 1. He was a brilliant student that had been working with hard water for years, specifically studying the gases coming from it. One night, while experimenting with separating the water's elements, Jay knocked over the hard water fume glass, and when he tried to clean it up, he fainted from exposure and woke up the fastest man alive. It's been suggested that this ridiculous origin originated from someone mixing up hard water and heavy water. Hard water is water with a higher mineral content. Heavy water is used in nuclear power plants, which makes it seem super mysterious. Heavy water isn't the most dangerous substance on Earth, but it can be slightly radioactive and it is denser, so it would alter someone's body chemistry. In real life, that means that you might just get a little bit sick, but in the comics, that means that you become faster than the speed of light. And finally, when it comes to strange origins, you cannot beat the Wizard. Bob Frank gained super speed after his father gave him a transfusion of mongoose blood to save him from a tropical virus. According to his backstory, Robert and his father fled the US, but in the new country, Robert caught a disease, and his father was unable to help him. In a desperate attempt to save his life, his scientist father injected him with mongoose blood after hearing local folk folklore about the restorative properties of mongooses. I mean, it worked, and it did miraculously cure Robert and granted him incredible speed. This origin is both memorable and delightfully odd. Honestly, the wizard's origin story is somehow more famous than the hero himself. Despite his peculiar beginnings, the wizard went on to become a member of superhero teams like the Invaders and the Liberty Legion, cementing his place in Marvel's golden age of comics.